we really want to make sure that those muscles stay toned so that we don't have issues like painful sex, urinary incontinence, any other kind of pelvic floor dysfunction. I was one of those people that fell for the myth that it only happened to old people. It only happened to women who had had babies and were in their 80s. There's just a lot of shame and embarrassment around this. And so we're trying to like decode that and unpack it. Let's just all make sure that our pelvic floor muscles are toned and in shape and in check.
You mentioned Kegels as one of the exercises. What are some other exercises? Mary Ellen, can you start by explaining what the pelvic floor is and why it's so important to overall wellness?
Yeah, so your pelvic floor is critical for your overall well-being because it's tied into everything. So where it is and what it is it's a group of muscles. It's not just one, it's a group of muscles that are kind of zigzag and hold like a hammock from your pubic bone and the back of your spine. So all that foundation of where your uterus, your bladder, those visceral organs, they're all laying and structured upon that pelvic floor muscle. It's basically like your floor, pelvic floor. And what it does is it holds everything into position. So when you're running or you're laughing or you're coughing and you're sneezing, everything is held into its natural position until something happens, until that pelvic floor weakens. And there's a lot of things that can contribute to that, right? Like pregnancy, childbirth, menopause, fluctuation in hormones, repetitive motion, like again in running or jumping, exercise, or something like that. There's a lot of factors that can weaken that pelvic floor and also atrophy from not using it because we don't know that those muscles exist. So we really want to make sure that those muscles stay toned so that we don't have issues like painful sex, urinary incontinence, any other kind of pelvic floor dysfunction, or sometimes that little pooch that you can never get rid of. A lot of postpartum women have that where they're like, well, I can never get rid of this pooch. A lot of the times it's that pelvic floor weakening and everything's a little out of shift and it's kind of distended a little bit. So, um, your pelvic floor is really important to a lot of different things, but we're here to focus with YARLAP, like at least in my realm, on the bladder aspect, so that you're not peeing yourself on it, involuntarily.
Wow, okay. I'm already learning so much. So one way to tell that you need to strengthen your pelvic floor is if you have a little pooch there. Are there any other ways that we kind of know that we need to do something about our pelvic floor and strengthening it?
Yeah, so again, that involuntary leakage of urine, like if you're lap sneeze, coughing, and peeing yourself, um, have that conversation with your doctor of like, is this isn't normal. What's going on? Is it my pelvic floor? I'm not a licensed healthcare professional, so I can't diagnose anybody, but that's like a big marker is if you're uncontrollably peeing just even just a little bit, or even in the other end, if you're peeing just a little bit involuntarily. Pelvic floor can be a big conversation that you want to have. Um, Flatulence unexpectedly and uncontrollably, again, pelvic floor can be a denominator for that. Painful sex, where a lot of women report if you have a hypertoned pelvic floor where it's tight all the time, it can be extremely painful for anything to be inserted, whether that is during sex or during an examination. Um, you really want to have that conversation. And I think a lot of women don't do that. They're kind of believing they should just suck it up. It's, part of being a woman is a new chapter. It's something you kind of have to roll with. That's not true. Talk to your doctor about your pelvic floor. Get that checked out. And have that conversation because I can guarantee you it's not the first time that they've had that conversation that day, and it won't be the last one. So definitely, if you're feeling something is not normal down there, talk to your doctor. Demand to have that conversation.
Why is pelvic floor health something that we don't talk about often? I was really excited to have you on here for one reason, because I'm not very familiar with this topic and I know it's a really important one. that all females should be aware of, and you don't hear about it or read about it very often anywhere. Why is that?
I personally believe that there's a huge stigma around women's health, especially anything below the belt. And the deeper and more isolated areas you get, the less and less we talk about them. And if we do talk about them, it's only in a sexual, pleasurable way. We don't talk really about vaginal care in any other aspect besides sex, right? That's where you mostly see it. That's mostly where you see Kegels as well, is do this one exercise to be fire in bed, but they don't talk about any of the other exercises, and they don't tell you that Kegel exercise might not be for everybody. Um, and so when it comes to the pelvic floor, I think that there's a lot of misinformation and myths surrounding it because we don't want to talk about it because there's a lot of shame in it. And like, if it's not about sex, we shouldn't talk about it. Which I think is a disservice to ourselves. But I think that a lot of women have basically been told to just suck it up. It's a new part of your life. It's something that you're going to have to deal with. It's
Mhm.
so common, so you're just going to be part of the numbers, and that's just how the way it goes. Sorry, tough tits. And I don't think that that's true because especially when it comes to the pelvic floor, there are a lot of tools and resources and information to tone that back up so you're not having these issues. But I think that there's a huge stigma and shame around it because it is in that vulvovaginal complex.
Mhm. You mentioned Kegels as one of the exercises. What are some other exercises? Because I've not been made aware of any other.
Yeah, so the Kegel exercises, those are the big ones, right? Those are the ones that we see everywhere. And that's a clenching exercise. So when you have atrophy or you don't have the ability to clench on demand, the Kegel exercises are really great, right? Because those are going to teach you how to clench on command. But if you're in the opposite direction and you have a hypertoned muscle or a tighter muscle, you don't want to clench that. You don't want to clench an already clenched muscle because that's not going to do anything. It could actually go in the opposite direction for you. So with a clenched muscle, you really want to learn how to relax those muscles. And a lot of that is mental. You want to be able to kind of get into a safe space and comfortable to relax those muscles and to teach them how to relax. And a lot of the people who do pelvic floor exercises, they're told to do different breathing exercises. So if you take like a deep breath in, you can kind of try to clench with that, relax and let everything relax as you exhale. But the issue with that is that because we can't see these muscles, it's extremely hard for us to do that because we, one, don't know where they are. Two, we've never really engaged them. So how do we know if we're engaging a muscle we can't see? So that's where like Yarlap and a lot of other different tools come in where it takes all of that guesswork away. So there's Kegel clenching, and then there's also pelvic floor relaxation exercises as well on the other end. And we want to do all of it because the idea and the definition of total pelvic floor control is the ability to relax and clench on demand. But a lot of the times we just focus on the clenching and we disregard the relaxing, but the relaxing is equally as important.
That makes perfect sense. It's like exercise, which I do some strength training, and some exercises that I do, I feel like even those muscles are getting worked. I mean, I feel them tighten when I'm doing, like inner thigh exercises, things like that. Am I at the same time strengthening my pelvic floor?
You may be. So a lot of the times so there was a study that well over 50% of women cannot do a Kegel exercise, even with written instruction. Again, it's just really difficult to engage a muscle that's so deeply isolated we can't see it. Um, and when they do an exercise or they believe they're doing an exercise, they're actually engaging their thighs, their lower abs, and their butt. And they believe, and you may engage part of your pelvic floor when you're engaging those, but you're not engaging the entire thing. And so you're not getting the entire benefits of that exercise because you're not engaging those muscles, right? So you might be engaging part of them when you're doing your inner thigh exercises or your lower abs. And that's what the beauty of yoga. Yoga really is, and Pilates, they have a very heavy focus on the pelvic floor muscles because it's engaging everything all at once, but it might not be engaging its entirety, if that makes sense. So it's really, really difficult. And the main tester is to do the Oxford test, which is to stick a finger in and see if you can clench. And we're not going to do that at the gym. I'm not going to do that on a random Wednesday. Um, that's a horrible invasive test to do to see if you're engaging these muscles. And so again, that's kind of where we stepped in with Yarlap to take away and ease any of that. Like, am I doing them correctly? Is
Mhm.
this the right muscle? How do I do this without shame and in the privacy of my own area? Um, because again, there's just a lot of shame and embarrassment around this, and so we're trying to like decode that and unpack it.
Mhm. Yes, and I love that so much. I want you to show us Yarlap, but before you do, there are some misconceptions about the pelvic floor only affecting women. Could you explain how it also affects men?
Yeah, so a lot of majority of the women who have urinary incontinence, I believe it's, I don't even, I think last time I saw it was like 75 or 80% are women, right, who have this issue of involuntary leakage, weakened pelvic floor. But there's also a good number of men who have it as well, but we just don't talk about that, and that it's very hard to find information on it or articles that talk about male urinary incontinence. Turns out everybody's got a pelvic floor. Everybody. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter anything like that. You have a pelvic floor and you have to keep it toned and you have to make sure that it's well maintained. Um, it doesn't just happen to women. It doesn't just happen to men. It doesn't just happen to um, women who work out excessively. It doesn't happen just to marathon runners or women who have had babies. It can happen to anybody if their pelvic floor has gotten a little weak. And I think that there's a lot of myths around that it's, just women, specifically women who work out, specifically women who have had babies, because they're the ones I think that are the most vocal of going, why is this happening to me all of a sudden? But it happens to a lot of people. And I think University of Michigan and AARP did a study a few years ago, and they found out that over the age of 50, it goes from normally it's like 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 women have urinary incontinence. And then all of a sudden, at the age of 50, I believe it becomes 1 in every 2. So it's
Wow.
not just uh, a certain aspect, right? It's not just a certain group. 1 in 2 is a pretty heavy statistic. So let's just all make sure that our pelvic floor muscles are toned and in shape and in check.
Mhm. How do men strengthen their pelvic floors?
They can do Kegel exercises as well, but they have an exterior indicator in their penis when they do it that goes up and down. Their
Mm.
penis will go up and down when they're doing and clenching it, but we don't have that. You and I don't have that luxury. So it's a little bit more difficult for us. And again, that's where that 50% of women, over 50% of women don't do these exercises correctly because even with written instruction, even with tutorials, because it's just so hard without a physical indicator.
What are some of the most common concerns or questions that you hear from women regarding pelvic floor and pelvic health, and how do you address those?
The big one I think that we hear is I'm in my 80s, I'm in my 70s, or even young women who are like, I'm in my 50s. Is it too late for me? No, it is not. It is never too late for you to start toning your pelvic floor muscles. When you start engaging them, you want to make sure that you're engaging them properly. You're not overworking those muscles. Um, but there is always room and there's always time for you to start gaining that control. And you want to make sure that again, you have that dialogue with your doctor, your physical therapist, whomever, to make sure that you're doing the correct exercises and that you're doing them the correct amount of time. Um, but you're never too late. You're never too old. We have women, we actually have a woman in her 90s who's using the YAR Um, and I
Mhm.
love that. I love it. It's always, time is always good to start toning those muscles, to start taking your quality of life very seriously and going in a positive area. I think that it's never too late.
Yes, I've heard my whole life that it's part of aging, and you see it becoming more and more normal that adults are wearing diapers.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, well, how do we do that as a preventative measure? And again, just talk about your pelvic floor. Again, there's no shame in it. It's a body part. Body parts are body parts. Have that conversation. Have it with your girlfriends. I, I mean, in the line of work and what I do, it's not weird for me to go into a coffee shop and start talking to my friends about this. But I can guarantee you, if you talk about it, somebody knows somebody. It's either themselves, their mom, their dad, aunt, grandparent. Somebody knows somebody.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
you can't be too old necessarily to start caring about this. How young is too young? When should we start, thinking about this?
I think that if you're continuously experiencing things where you're like, this isn't normal, into your 20s, have that conversation. Um, Especially collegiate athletes, um, basketball players, volleyball players, uh, equestrians, they have a high rate of it because, again, there's that repetitive motion, that constant bouncing,
Mhm.
that can wear on your pelvic floor muscles. So you want to make sure that those individuals have their pelvic floor muscles that are toned. Um, Youth is a wonderful thing, though. So I think that you want to make sure that you are talking to your doctor. Um, I think that that's the biggest step is just to reclaim that confidence in the doctor's office. Reclaim, like it's not embarrassing. What do you have to be embarrassed about? Nothing. You're doing
Yeah.
yourself a big service and a big advocacy by talking about this.
Mhm. Yes. I'm wondering, do you see a connection between those who have sex regularly and those who exercise versus those who don't?
Not necessarily, but people aren't like reporting to us about their sex lives all the time. But there is a huge myth that, there's something called a loose vagina. No, there's not. Don't fall for that. Um, your vagina is a beautiful part of it. It's self-sustaining, self-cleaning, but it also is there, it's not loose. That's about the tone of your pelvic floor. Again, just open up that conversation, um, and make sure everything is in its correct position.
Wow. Okay. How did you get involved in this? Why are you so passionate about pelvic floor health?
So my dad and I are actually co-founders of Yard Lab. So I work with my dad, who's actually upstairs with his granddaughter, my daughter, to make sure I can can record this. And he is a medical device engineer, and he was on the team that helped create a similar device for postpartum re-education for the NHS, the National Healthcare Services over in France, Britain, Scandinavia, and Germany. And then over here in the United States, we had a family friend who was having issues. And we said, go get this. It's probably covered. There's nothing. There was nothing. And so after years of working with the FDA and thousands of pages of paperwork, we finally got FDA clearance. It's a bona fide medical device, to start help training that pelvic floor muscle so that women who are like our family friend don't feel so isolated and depressed and just so riddled with anxiety over this, that they have a tool that they can use at home um, to better themselves. Because watching her kind of spin out because there was just nothing available was heartbreaking, because we knew that we could do something about it. So, I mean, it took a long, long time. You don't just wake up one day and you're like, yeah, I'm an FDA cleared device. I mean, it took a really long time, but that's kind of how we fell into this, is that we wanted to help her and kind of give her the correct tools that we know we could create, because dad had already created something very similar for the NHS. And I was just about to graduate, and he told me that we got FDA clearance. He wants to do something with this. And I looked at him and I said, I don't want to do something where it's like only old people. And I was one of those people that fell for the myth that it only happened to old people. It only happened to women who had had babies and were in their 80s and all this other stuff. And I fell into that trap. And he looked at me and he called me out and he said, that's not true. You need to do your research, dive into it a little bit, and see if it's something that you want to do. And I said, okay, talk to my friends. They all knew somebody who had it, and they all assumed that it was normal. And I went on and did some research, and it seemed like everybody had fallen into this lie, um, that it's just a part of your life journey and you got to suck it up, that there's nothing you could do. And I thought, I can stand on a soapbox and tell people that it's not. And I worked for women. I was an intern for Women for Women International, where we were telling women that they could have bank accounts and all these other different things. And I thought this is perfect because I can advocate for women and work with my dad at the same time. Like it doesn't get better than this. And so I did that, and what, 8 years later, this is what I'm still doing and I love it. And that's how I kind of fell into it. And I think that it's really important to have people like you and other podcasters and influencers who advocate for proper women's health, especially
Mhm.
on things that aren't ever talked about.
Yeah, that's why I love that you're doing this, even from the very beginning when you're talking about how it's all connected. Like that's why the pelvic floor matters and it needs to be addressed because yeah, it's all connected. And the fact that you are putting to bed the misconception about it having to do with age because everything in our body can be healed. Everything can rejuvenate itself. It just needs the right tools, the right movements, the right food, the right whatever it might be. If the body gets what it needs, this is my belief at least,
Yeah, no,
that
I think, yeah, like if you have the proper resources and tools and support, there is so much that your body can do to itself, right? The body is such a cool, constantly healing itself situation. And if you give itself and you nurture it, um, there again, like there is no reason for you to be involuntarily leaking or having painful sex or anything like this. We just need to make sure people have access to those tools and to those resources and don't feel shamed and kind of made small by discussing those topics.
oh, yes. Thank you so much for discussing these topics. Without further ado, I would love for you to show us your lab.
Oh, yes, I would love to. Okay, so there's the control unit itself is this, very small, very cute. And then there's the part that is inserted into the vagina, and it's quite small as well. So it's really tiny. And
Mhm.
you insert this like a tampon. and you turn this on and you find a movement that is comfortable for you. And within 15 to 20 minutes, at 3 to 5 days a week, it tones that pelvic floor muscle. So it's not something that you insert and keep inserted. No, it's something that you use at least 15 minutes a day, 3 to 5 days a week, and it slowly rehabilitates that pelvic floor muscle tone back to where it should be. And everything is kind of put again back into its natural position. And that's what the Yarlap does. It does it all for you. You just sit there. You literally just sit there. You don't have to think, am I doing the exercise properly? Am I doing it for the right amount of time? Is this too much? Is it too little? Uh, am I, you know, am I doing myself a service? All that guesswork is just, we take care of it all. You have enough to worry about. When you decide to take control of your pelvic floor muscles, we're here for you and we'll take care of the rest.
Wow. So you just insert it and turn it on.
Yep. And then you just sit there or yeah, we have people sit there, lie there, um, read a book, watch your TV. I used to watch New Girl. I used to watch runs of New Girl. And at the end of the episode, I was done for the day. So, and that's
That's
it.
great.
It's a quick, easy workout. And again, like I love it because I don't have to self-initiate anything. I don't have to sit there and think, clench, rest, clench, rest, clench. I don't have to sit there and think about it. I just go insert it, comfortable. That's it.
Okay, so that's what's happening after you insert it. It's kind
Hmm.
of it's sending whatever signals it does to your body, and that's how
Yeah.
your body automatically responds.
Yeah. So in nature, you send a signal from your head to your pelvic floor muscle, right? To clench. You send that signal. If you have a weakened pelvic floor or there's atrophy or you just don't know where those muscles are, that signal can get jumbled. And so when that signal gets jumbled, you're not getting the full benefits. And so what we do is we go directly to the muscle and we send that signal that's similar to the one that is your brain saying move, the yarlap saying move, and it's sending it directly to the muscle, sending it directly to the correct muscle for the correct amount of time. It's got clinically preset programs. So it's doing the work rest ratio for you. You don't have to sit there and think about that. It's already done for you.
Wow, that's amazing. Where can listeners go to learn more about Yarlap? Where could they go to get it?
Yeah, so we are available at our website, yarlap.com. We're also on Amazon as well. And if you want to ask us questions, go ahead and send us an email or talk to us on Instagram or Yarlap on Instagram. And it comes directly to you in a plain brown box. No one needs to know that you're ordering it. Um, and everything is included, battery as well. So it's ready to go right out of the box.
So does the battery need to be replaced?
Yes. Yeah. So it uses a 9-volt battery that does need to be replaced.
Okay. And then I'm guessing you just clean it after you use it.
Yeah. So every time you use it, you want to make sure that you clean it with warm water and disinfecting soap. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. I have two questions I ask every guest at the end, but before I do, is there anything that we did not cover about pelvic health that you feel is important to share?
No, I just think, and we hammered on this so often, but I think it's so important that everybody knows that like you're not alone. You're advocating for yourself by having a very difficult conversation, but you're also doing yourself such a good service to have that conversation. And so don't ever feel small, don't ever feel bad. You're doing so, so well. And if we're part of that journey, wonderful. If we can help you, wonderful. But I think taking that step yourself to talk about the pelvic floor with whether it's with your partner, your doctor, your friends, or whomever, that's a huge, huge step. And I don't think that it should be taken lightly that you did something so wonderful for yourself.
Mm,
Yeah.
very well said. That might have been your answer for this next question,
Oh,
but
okay.
it is, what is your number one health tip? So it can be anything, whether it's mindset, diet and nutrition, emotional, spiritual, just the one piece of advice you would like everyone to know.
From my standpoint is make sure that your pelvic floor muscles are taken care of, right? Just make sure that they're taken care of. Whether that again is through a conversation, through the yar lap, through whatever means, just make sure that your pelvic floor muscles are taken care of and that they're well nurtured.
And for your final question, you get to choose a number 1 through 100, and that will correlate to a more personal question.
3.
3. If you could only bring 3 things with you on a deserted island, what would you choose and why?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm so
Yep.
bad at this question. Okay. A deserted island. Is this like I know no one is ever gonna come get me or
Yeah.
okay. A water filtration system.
Smart.
Uh, a hard copy picture of my family. And
Your lap.
yeah, I'd probably bring a Yarlap, but I think also at the same time, just for probably like a knife so I can hunt and cut things down
Mm, yeah, for the sake of survival.
for the sake of like I'm thinking like how do I live?
Right.
So I think that. But if I had like the necessities, 100% still the photo, Yarlap, and a plush blanket.
Mm,
Yeah.
great answer. Thank you so much, Mary Ellen, for coming on. And make sure you check out the description. All the links will be there. You can find your lap there. And I really, really appreciate you sharing your mission. I know you're doing so much good in the world and you are helping so many women and men learn about this topic. So thank you for it so much.
Thank you so much for having me and just letting me be part of this community. Thank you.
Absolutely.